Welcome to Cheat Sheet Tales, where secrets slip, lies unravel, and the truth always has a twist. Real stories, raw confessions, shocking betrayals. Drop a comment if you've ever caught a red flag too late. Now, let's get into today's tale. My name is Eli. I'm 44, and I've lived in the same suburb of Des Moines for almost 15 years. The kind of place where lawns are trimmed, trash bins line up like little soldiers on Tuesdays, and you wave to neighbors you barely know. I'm an auditor by trade, long hours, fluorescent lights, and a constant hunt for things that don't quite add up. Funny how that SKL didn't help me when it came to my own life that night. I came home earlier than usual, not for any big reason, just a small impulse. I'd left work around 4:30 after finishing a quarterly review early, and on the drive home, I stopped at a little market off Route 6, picked up apples, cinnamon, and pie crusty don't bake. Not typically I follow instructions, I file reports, I analyze, but something about making that pie felt like reclaiming something, or maybe just distracting myself from what I hadn't wanted to name. Marissa, my wife, 39 years old, texted me that morning saying she had plans that evening, a coworker's party, Jess's bachelorette. She wrote, followed by a champagne emoji and "Don't wait up, babe." I didn't think twice about it. We've been married 9 years. Trust was never the question, or at least, I didn't think it was. Not yet. When I walked in the door, the house greeted me with silence. I expected that I set the pie on the counter to cool, washed my hands, and headed to the bedroom to change. That's when it happened, the first crack, the subtle shift, the detail I wouldn't be able to forget. Her blouse, the cream one with the little pearl buttons, was draped over the back of the bedroom chair. It looked like it had been carelessly tossed, like she'd come home, quickly changed, and left again. That alone wouldn't have bothered me. But then, I noticed something else. The scent had hit me the second I reached down to move the blouse off the chair. Deep, musky cologne, rich, expensive, not cheap body spray, not deodorant, no. This was something deliberate, sophisticated, not mine. I lifted the blouse to my nose again, just to be sure, and there it was. It wasn't faint clung. Saturated like it had transferred from skin, not from a passing hug, from contact, proximity, intimacy. And then, like it had always been there. But I was only just seeing it now. I noticed the smear on the collar lipstick, not her usual shade. Marissa always wore subtle colors. Rosewood, muted pink shades that looked natural under office lighting. This was bold wine red, glamorous, theatrical almost. My stomach twisted in, on itself. I stood there for a few minutes, just holding the blouse, running scenarios in my head, trying to justify it. Maybe a friend tried on her shirt, maybe someone at the party got too close, maybe. But even as I scrambled for explanations, I already knew. There was a weight in my chest, heavy and familiar. The same kind I get when I find a client's numbers don't add up and the paper trail stops making sense. It was doubt, and doubt doesn't come out of nowhere. I pulled out my phone. My hands felt colder than they should have. I thumbed a quick message. "Hey babe, came home early, baked something for you. Hope the party's fun." Her reply came back in less than 10 seconds. Bachelorette night. Jess's "Don't wait up" office. Early tomorrow. Too fast, too polished. Not that she replied quickly, Marissa's fast on her phone, but there was something about the text itself didn't sound like her. Or at least, not the her I'd known for nearly a decade. The phrasing felt staged, like she was trying to paint a picture before I asked a question. That's when I sat down, still holding the blouse, still half-dressed. I didn't change, I didn't move. I just sat on the bed trying to decide if I was losing it, if I was being paranoid, or if something deeper was shifting under my feet. Later that night, when she came home around 1:20 in the morning, she was barefoot, heels in hand, smiling like nothing in the world was wrong. She kissed me on the forehead like she always did. When she thought I was asleep, I wasn't, the next morning over breakfast, I asked her, careful not to sound accusatory, just casual. "Hey, did you change before you left for Jess's last night?" She blinked, then shook her head. "Nope, went straight from work." "Why?" I shrugged. "Just thought I saw your blouse over the chair." "Oh, right." She smiled like it just hit her. "Erica tried it on. She was getting makeup on hers, borrowed it for a second." I nodded. She sipped. "Her coffee? Is that all?" "Yeah," I said. "Just wondering." She leaned in, touched my wrist. "You're overthinking again, Eli. That line, that's what stuck with me the most." I'm overthinking, except I wasn't the one making up stories. I wasn't the one bringing home unexplained scents. I wasn't the one slipping lipstick-covered clothing into the laundry pile and pretending it never happened. That evening, she worked late again, said they had a quarterly alignment call. That was dragging. I didn't ask questions. I didn't want to hear more answers that didn't line up. Instead, I sat alone in the kitchen, the pie from the night before. Still untouched, it sat under a glass dome on the counter like a monument to something. I was still pretending wasn't happening. The house felt colder, not physically. The heater was fine. But there was this feeling, this creeping awareness that something had shifted. The kind of cold that settles in when the trust in a room vanishes. When you're surrounded by silence that feels too practiced, like the walls have learned to keep secrets. I stared at the pie. Wondered if she'd even eat it. Wondered if she'd taste cinnamon and think of me, or if someone else's cologne was stronger. Now closer. I wanted to believe I was wrong, I really did. But something about that night, the blouse, the scent, the way her fingers didn't brush mine like they used to when she passed by, it all clung to me quietly, like that perfume refusing to fade, and I knew then, deep down, beneath the denial and the hope that this wasn't a one-off, it wasn't a misunderstanding, it was the beginning of something unraveling, and I was wide awake. It didn't take long for the little things to start adding. Up the blouse, the cologne, they could have been coincidences. I told myself that a lot wanted to believe it, but once the seed of doubt takes root, everything becomes a clue or a question or both. A week later, I came home to find a key lying on the entryway. Matte small silver attached to a cheap motel keychain, plastic cracked in the corner, red lettering on one side. Room 108. Sunset Lodge. I just stared at it, standing in the doorway like I'd stepped into someone else's life. We don't stay in motels. We haven't been on a trip in over a year. And if we had, Marissa would have picked something with spa robes and eucalyptus candles, not something with hourly rates and a flickering vacancy sign. When she got home, I didn't wave it in her face. I just asked, "Hey, this was by the door, yours?" She looked down at the keychain, blinked once, and nodded almost too quickly. "Oh yeah, locker key. Jim switched their system, that's why it looks weird." I looked down at the plastic again. No way this was from any Jim, but I didn't push. "You left it outside," I said. She laughed too lightly. "Probably fell out of my tote. Guess I'm getting sloppy." Sloppy. That word stuck with me. Not because of the key, but because it felt like she was describing herself in a moment where the truth almost slipped. Later that night, I Googled Sunset Lodge. It was real. On the edge of town, just off the highway. Reviews full of phrases like "no questions asked" and "bring your own towels." Nothing about yoga retreats or women's locker rooms. And here's the kicker. Marissa never went to the gym. Not once in 9 years. She always said she hated the vibe and preferred walking our neighborhood or stretching at home with YouTube playing. Yoga was annoying and too slow, her words. But now suddenly she had yoga every Thursday and Monday, and some Saturdays. Hot yoga, she'd started calling it. "I'm detoxing," she said. "It's been good for me. Good for her." I started noticing her phone habits changing too. Used to be that her phone lived on the charger, unlocked, screen up on the counter. Now it never left her side. She took it with her into the bathroom. Turned off message previews. Started using a passcode she hadn't told me. One night it buzzed during dinner. She picked it up so fast the fork slipped from her other hand and clanged on the plate. When I looked up, she was already mid-smile, brushing it off. "Jess again," she said. "Wedding drama?" I nodded. I didn't say anything. But later, when she went to bed early, "Long day, babe." My head's pounding. I stayed up. Sat on the couch in the dark, scrolling aimlessly on my phone, pretending not to care. Out of nowhere, a car's headlights flooded the front window. A white sedan pulled to the curb, sat idling for a minute, then slowly backed out and left. No one got out. I recognized it vaguely. It had been around before, parked a few houses down some nights, nothing suspicious. Unless you were already suspicious. That night, I dreamed of that motel key. In the dream, I unlocked room 108 and walked into a room full of her laughter. But she wasn't alone. I couldn't see him, but I knew he was there. The room smelled like her perfume, and something else. something sharp, foreign, a scent that didn't belong to us. When I woke up, the sun was just coming up. The house was quiet, but not peaceful. It felt like a set, like props had been arranged in just the right places to maintain the illusion. Her coffee mug in the sink, the throw blanket folded on the couch, her sandals by the door. Too perfect. Perfect. That morning, she left early for one of her retreats, said it was part of a corporate mindfulness seminar, 3 days at a nature center outside Cedar Rapids. I smiled, kissed her goodbye, and watched her drive away. She never looked back at the house. By noon, I drove out to the Sunset Lodge. I didn't go in. I parked across the street, engine off, and just sat there. Watched the office door open and close. A man stepped out, holding a plastic bag and a paper cup. Another couple pulled in behind. Him, laughing, touching each other's hands like they had a secret no one else could see. I stared at the parking lot, wondering if I'd recognize her car, wondering if I even wanted to know. Because here's the thing no one tells you. When you get close to the truth, your brain starts to panic. Not because you're afraid of being wrong, but because you're afraid of being right. I never went inside. I turned the car around and drove home. When she came back 3 days later, she had a sunburn on her nose. Said they hiked all afternoon. But the weather reports said it rained the whole weekend. Her skin didn't smell like bug spray or fresh air. It smelled like hotel soap. That night, I lay awake next to her while she slept. I stared at the ceiling, trying to count the lies. Not the big ones, just the subtle ones. The way she said, "I'm tired," instead of "I'm home." The way her hugs changed, shorter, one-armed. The way she no longer asked how my day was. I started keeping a journal, not out of paranoia, more like survival. A place to write down details before they vanished. I titled it, "What I'm Not Supposed to Notice." Entry 1, motel key, wrong gym. Wrong town, wrong scent. Entry 2, training retreat with no photos, no texts. Came home quieter than usual. Entry 3, car parked down the street again. Same one, white sedan, waited, left. Entry 4, stopped saying "I love you" unless I said it first. And still, I hadn't said a word. Not really, because saying something means choosing to believe what you already know, and once you believe it, there's no way back. It's funny. I used to think cheating was loud. Affairs were dramatic, obvious, lipstick on collars, screaming matches in parking lots, ultimatums shouted down staircases. But now I know it's quiet, almost silent. It slips in through the front door with a gym tote and a kiss on the cheek. It hides behind smiles and corporate retreats. It smells like hotel soap and cologne that doesn't belong to you. It lives in the pauses, the slippery details, the key that shouldn't exist, and it waits. There's something cruel about realizing your instincts were right all along. You don't feel proud. You don't feel vindicated. You feel hollow, because now you can't lie to yourself anymore. It all came to a head at a private party, the kind of thing I'd normally skip, but Marissa insisted I come. "Just for an hour," she said. "Jess's fiance's lake house. Everyone will be there." And by everyone, she meant people I barely knew from her office, and a few couples from her yoga group. Not exactly my crowd, but I agreed. I had a reason now. I wanted to see her in her element, see how she acted when she didn't know I was watching. I arrived late on purpose, told her I had to stay late at work. She didn't seem disappointed. "Drive safe" was all she said, not "wish you were here" or "can't wait to see you." Just safe. The house sat right on the water. A beautiful place, with a long gravel driveway and twinkling lights strung between the trees. Music drifted from the back patio. Laughter, clinking glasses, the easy sound of people who weren't holding their breath. I stepped inside and let the door close quietly behind me. The entry was empty, shoes piled near the bench. I recognized her heels immediately, gold straps. The ones she always said hurt, but looked too good to leave behind. A half-empty glass of rosé sat on the hallway table. Voices came from the living room. But I didn't go there. I moved toward the kitchen, quietly. That's where the guests had left their bags, a row of purses and totes hanging from a makeshift coat rack beside the pantry. I wasn't looking for anything, or maybe I was. I don't know. My hands moved without asking permission. Her bag was near the bottom, partially unzipped. I reached in, half expecting nothing, half expecting everything. What I pulled out nearly knocked the breath from my lungs. My wedding ring, the one I gave her 9 years ago, the one with the small scratch across the inside, from when I dropped it on the porch our first week living here. She told me she lost it on our anniversary trip to Colorado. Said she took it off while applying sunscreen, and it must have fallen between the slats of the cabin deck. I remember searching for that ring in the dark with a flashlight, angry at myself for not being more careful. She kissed me that night and told me it wasn't my fault, that things get lost sometimes, but it hadn't been lost. She still had it. Tucked in her bag, right next to a folded piece of paper, a note, creased and worn. I unfolded it with shaking fingers and recognized the handwriting immediately. I stayed at Noah's place after that. My best friend since college, he and his wife Tessa gave me the garage room out back. Not glamorous, but quiet, detached from the main house, perfect. The first few nights I didn't sleep much. I kept waiting for her to text, to call, to show up with excuses. She didn't. Maybe she finally understood the difference between guilt and remorse, or maybe she realized I wasn't playing the forgiving husband. I started writing at night. Nothing fancy, just a document on my laptop titled, What I Didn't Notice. Line by line, I filled it with all the tiny moments I'd ignored, the nights she came home smelling like hotel shampoo, the way she laughed at texts and told me they were from Jess the morning she didn't remember it was our anniversary until I handed her a card. The list grew fast, so did the distance between who I was before this and who I was now. I wasn't a husband anymore. I was a man untangling himself from a version of love that only went one way. One night. Noah came out back with 2 beers, handed me one, didn't say anything, just sat beside me on the porch steps and watched the rain hit the driveway. You holding up? He asked eventually. I nodded. Need anything? I shook my head. Just space. He clinked his bottle against mine and didn't push. That was the thing. I didn't need sympathy. I needed air. I needed time without performance, without trying to keep things together while everything inside me was breaking apart. By the end of the week, I realized something strange. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even hurt in the same way. I was just tired, like someone who'd run out of gas miles ago and only just realized they'd been coasting downhill ever since. Her text stopped after day 6. No final apology, no big gesture, no grand admission, just silence. And somehow that hurt more than anything else because it meant she'd let go before I had. The days that followed felt like I was floating through someone else's life. Noah and Tessa did their best to give me space. They never asked too many. Questions never tiptoed around me like I was fragile, and I appreciated that more than I could say. Sometimes Tessa would leave leftovers outside the garage door with a sticky note that just said eat, and a smiley face. I always ate, yet I slept on a futon that creaked every time I moved. The ceiling had a crack that ran from one corner to the other like a timeline, and I'd catch myself tracing it with my eyes at night over and over again. Some nights I slept, some nights I didn't. I didn't go back to work right away. I told my supervisor I needed some time for personal reasons. He didn't press. Maybe the circles under my eyes and the tension in my voice told him everything he needed to know. For the first time in years, I started writing again. Nothing fancy, just a document on my laptop. Same one I'd started before. What I didn't notice. Each night I added to it. She stopped calling me by pet names. She forgot how I take my coffee. She used to ask about my day. Then she stopped when I got sick last winter. She left me soup and a Post-it. No hugs, no care. She never looked me in the eyes when she said, I love you. Not toward the end. I wasn't writing it to punish her. I was writing it to remind myself that it didn't all go bad at once, that there were signs, glitches, fault lines forming quietly under the surface. Things I had labeled stress or routine, when maybe they were just the early stages of indifference. At some point during that second week away, I went back to our house just to check in. Get a few things I'd forgotten. Maybe see if she was still there. She wasn't. No car in the driveway. No lights on, just a cold, quiet house that looked like it had given up to the porch. Light was still on the same one she always left for me. That felt ironic now. Inside it was spotless, like she'd cleaned everything on her way out, erasing her footprints as she went. Her mug was gone, so was her side of the closet. She'd even taken the dog bed. Not that we had a dog anymore, but she always said she'd keep it for when we're ready again. In the kitchen on the table was a letter. My name in her handwriting. No envelope, just folded once. I stood there for a long time before opening it. I told myself I didn't care what it said, but of course I did. Part of me still hoped she'd admit to it all in a way that made sense, that gave me something to work with, closure, clarity, something more than quiet. The letter wasn't long. She wrote that she was lost, that she'd felt like she was disappearing into a version of herself she didn't recognize anymore, that she didn't mean to betray me, not in the beginning, that she was sorry, truly sorry, and that if she could take it all back, she would. But the part that stuck with me most was this. I didn't plan to fall out of love. I just didn't stop it when I felt myself slipping. There it was, the truth, or close enough to it. No accusations, no excuses, just an admission of gravity that what falls does not always rise again. At the bottom of the note, she'd drawn a small heart that felt like the cruelest part. Next to the letter was a photo frame, one I hadn't seen in a while. It was the picture from the park where I proposed. She was laughing in it. I looked nervous and young. It used to sit on her desk. I turned it over face down and left it there. I walked through the rest of the house one last time. Every room felt staged, like a memory that had already moved on without me. I didn't cry. I didn't scream or throw things or sit on the floor and bury my face in my hands. I thought I might, but I didn't. I just walked out the front door, locked it behind me, and didn't look back at Noah's place. I kept my night simple. I made cheap coffee, watched the rain collect on the pavement outside the window, read old mystery novels I'd never finished. Sometimes I sat in the car parked in the driveway and just let the silence settle. And slowly, painfully, I began to breathe again. One morning about 3 weeks after I left the house, I opened my laptop and started a new file. I titled it, What I Still Have. I didn't know what I'd put in it yet, but the name felt right. I was tired of writing about what was gone. The first line I typed was this: I still have myself. Even if I had to lose her to find him, it was a start. Noah came out to the garage one afternoon while I was writing. He leaned on the door frame and watched me for a second. You look better, he said. Thanks, you going to be okay? I nodded eventually, grinned. That's the best answer you've given since you moved in later that week. I started jogging again, just short runs through the neighborhood. My legs hated it, my chest burned, but each footstep felt like taking something back. The texts from Marissa never came again. No calls, no new letters. She disappeared like a chapter that had run out of pages. I didn't chase her. I didn't need to. For the first time in years, I felt like I had nothing left to hide from myself. The man in the mirror didn't look like someone waiting anymore. He looked like someone starting over, like someone